I'd like to acknowledge Australia's First Nation people as the traditional custodians of the land, and for this episode in particular, the Dharawal people. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging.
More or less, it was a place that was sort of designed for 18-year-old me, current age me and 60-year-old me. So far, I think that a lot of people get it.
This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale. Lalalas is one of Wollongong's most tenacious live music venues. Described as part dive bar, part art space and part live music venue, Lalalas is simply something you need to be part of. I'm joined today by licensee, venue manager and all-round friggin' legend, Nathan Stratton. G'day Nathan, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
It's such a pleasure. It's been a very long time between drinks. How the hell are you?
Yeah, no, really good, really good. There's a little bit of sunshine in Wollongong today, so that makes it even that little bit better. It actually feels like the first day of spring, even though we're kind of, maybe 4 or 6 weeks into it. But yeah, no, really good.
Yeah, it's about bloody time, isn't it? It's just like time for everything to dry out and for us to kind of have a little bit of bright sunshine on our horizons.
Yeah, I reckon so too.
Nathan, being part of the bar scene goes quite a way back for you. Tell me about how the bar bug got you.
I think it's sort of funny. I sort of got into hospitality via washing dishes, really. It's one of those sorts of things where I never really sought out for it. But as I said, yeah, I was washing dishes not long out of school, and it started off as a job for me, just to fund my sort of passion for music. I didn't really ever think I was going to have a real job. I decided that I kind of wanted to be a musician. So to pay the rent until I was to become a rock star was to wash dishes. So I sort of, after a couple of years of doing that, I realized that, maybe the rock star thing wasn't going to happen. So I might try and, find another career, I guess, and sort of move my way from washing dishes to slinging beers, and I guess in my sort of late teens, early 20s, as a sort of born and bred Wollongong fella, I saw like a need of there wasn't didn't seem to be a place for me. There was a pub down the road called the Oxford where a lot of people found themselves home, and I, including myself. But I saw that there wasn't really anything for people like myself, and felt comfortable, and I just felt like it didn't. I think most of the bars in Wollongong at that time weren't really as good as they could be for Wollongong, and I felt like that's sort of where a little bit of drive for me started. So I like on the journey to where we got to now was I was at the University of Wollongong Uni Bar for it must have been close to like 15 years. So and about like a bit over 10 of that as a managerial role, to sort of give myself a bit of experience and build up a bit of knowledge base, mostly around live music, but obviously with food and beverage as well. And I guess I came to a little bit of a point there that I felt like a bit more comfortable in my knowledge base, and then thought it was time in 2019 to start my own thing, and that's how Lalalas sort of began.
I mean, talk to me a little bit about your days at Wollongong Uni Bar, because I know that was kind of quite formative, and you had some epic live music acts in your time there. Does any particular gig stand out?
Yeah, there was so many. I guess that when we started, I guess we always had some great spaces for live music on campus, but I guess we weren't. I didn't feel like we were doing enough of it. When I started, I think we might have been doing maybe about 8 shows a year, and that was mostly O parties and more your typical sort of student party events. By the end, we're doing a bit over 100 a year, so it sort of it really opened up the space to the greater community and lots of cool, diverse stuff. I think probably one of my favorite shows, or I guess a feather in the cap for us was Death Cab for Cutie, because that was we were on the same touring circuit as, I think they're playing the Opera House the next night. So that was like, that gave me a lot of satisfaction that we'd got this, this venue, and like to be on the poster next to the Opera House. Like, there's to be not comparing ourselves to the big house, but being on the same poster was pretty cool.
Absolutely. I mean, I actually think, Death Cab for Cutie was a bit of an album for my uni days as well. You said earlier that, you were trying to make it to be that rock star, but you have been incredibly successful in the band Shining Bird, where you play bass. Congratulations on that. How does your experience with playing live gigs around the country kind of help you when you're operating your own venue?
Thanks. Yeah, it's been like, all those I guess high school kind of dreams have really been fulfilled playing with Shining Bird and some of the all close friends of mine and ours. But it's been like fantastic. I guess in the last 10 years of having most of my time away from work touring with Shining Bird, it's been a great insight to see what other cities have as far as live music spaces. And again, it really, showed that Wollongong didn't have a live music focused space at that sort of small to medium capacity. And, we're a pretty intimate sort of size of, 170 odd in our live music space. But that's ideal size really for Wollongong. We didn't have that 150 to 300 cap room, like even like a lot of capital cities have that. Like, I guess we had that sort of difficulty even at the Unibar days of just our room being a little bit too big it just needed to reflect our population pool, and we're not quite as big as Sydney, so we needed to have that space. And as I said, when we were touring with Shining Bird, I got a good insight to how other people how they do it, and how to make a space that musicians can feel comfortable, not a subsidiary to the football or whatever might else be going on. There's a funny thing that I'm too young to know the days of pre-pokey kind of sort of stuff, but I can imagine before then that you would have felt a little bit more welcomed, because to get people into pubs and bars, you needed live entertainment. And that seems to have been replaced by pokies in a lot of places. So yeah, like it's been really valuable to be able to benchmark while touring around the country, to bring back some ideas for us in Wollongong and to start our sort of first venue here. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine how much Wollongong's changed. I'm terrible. I've spent most of my time in Sydney and never get to the Gong. So how have you seen, if you were to kind of describe to me, how have you seen the Wollongong drink scene change in the time that you've been around?
Yeah, well, the good thing is that a lot of people are coming back. Like I think that, like, not too dissimilar to yourself, have made the pilgrimage to Sydney or Melbourne or further afield, and there's been a lot of hard work, I guess, for the people that have, I wouldn't say been stuck behind Wollongong, but there's been a few people that have been really trying to change our sort of sort of hospo kind of footprint, and there's some really exciting things that have happened. I guess it's probably, I'm just riffing here on years, but I feel like maybe 10 years ago might have been the first small bar in Wollongong. That was the Otis Bar, which was on Crown Street, and that later became the Little Prince, which is down the laneway from Lalalas. And I think that kind of changed the game, as far as things being a little bit more, Melburnian, for the lack of a better word, and being just a bit more like cocktail drink focused instead of, the things that I got used to, which was just those sort of booze barn kind of, type stinky, sweaty, yucky places. And the sort of, kind of just sort of gave it a little bit more of a bit of a vibe. And I guess there's a lot of bars that have spawned from there and then started to get their own identity. So it's like, it can be quite a nice bar hop, Wollongong now, because you can kind of, find your different wine, gin bars, whiskey bars. And those stinky, smelly places still exist too. If you get to that point, and that's what you need to do. Sure, there's always a space for that, I guess. But so there's. I think Wollongong has changed quite a bit. There's still like. It's a funny town, funny city. I think that we're no longer that sort of working class still city, but we kind of don't really know how to not be. So I feel like that we're in a little bit of a sort of like it's sort of nearly a holding pattern transition for becoming a little bit more white collar. And I think the success of the university of bringing a lot of international and domestic students from just all different backgrounds and just different flavors of influence, and it's a kind of a really exciting kind of time, I think, because like there's just it has changed a lot, because there is something for everybody kind of thing, and we're blessed with like the environment of this area is the secret is finally out that most people that grew up here can't afford to live here anymore, but it's starting to get where it needs to be. There's still a lot of work to be done, but we're not quite the 24-hour, 7 days a week city. But it's getting better, and I think it's a lot more fun than and less scary than what it was when I was sort of 18, 19, 20 years old. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny that you say that. I mean, I spent my time in Sydney and was desperate to get back down to the South Coast, but it was always a question of how long, and do I need to save for before I can afford to, buy down that way, and thrilled to be back now, but it certainly took some time. What was your inspiration for like opening Lalalas? I mean, where did you kind of, when you imagined it in your mind, what did you want to create? Was it, like you said, something that you just thought this is what is missing in the gap of what's happening in Wollongong, or did you want to recreate something else that you'd experienced?
Yeah, there's been a few things. Like with all that talk about Wollongong, when I was younger, I really wanted to get out of Wollongong, and I think that I craved something that wasn't here. So there's a bit of inspiration of a bit of a fantasy of making something that didn't exist, and something that I thought might have been like somewhere more exotic, like in Europe, which I hadn't really had the opportunity to see at that time. But so that's how the idea started. But more or less, it was pretty much a place that was sort of designed for 18-year-old me, current age me, and 60-year-old me. And that it might sound boring, but I guess it's kind of reasonably simple but complex. So I wanted to create something that was some of it, like I guess when we're talking about small bars and whatnot, it can be a little bit pretentious at times, and I think some of the booze barns don't have that comfort that a classic pub does. And I guess I wanted to create something that I hear stories of our parents' kind of era of when you could have everything, everything was cheaper and there was no restrictions on what you could do and all these kind of things. So I guess I wanted to try and create a little bit of a taste of that, but also sort of a bit more of a modern feel that where, you can have some exciting different cocktails, some, a bit more of a progressive wine list. And so having those sorts of, a nice cheap lager, but also having something that, a little bit fancy as well at the same time. And it's one of those sorts of things that where I think the most important thing for in particular a hospitality business is to have that identity. And I actually, before we opened, I thought that was a really simple answer, and your identity can change a little bit, and I feel like we're still evolving a little bit. But the basics of it was that, that where I needed to try and make the, past, present and future me happy, and hopefully other people enjoy that. And then, and then we'll just, so that's kind of how we opened. And then so far, I think that a lot of people get it. I think they understand. Not necessarily it's about, the things that I enjoy, but I think that, like-minded people are after that and see that, experience, when they come here. Yeah.
There's so much that you just said that I agree with. And I think that, the art of a good dive bar, like you said, seems simplistic, but actually is pretty layered. And I think, there's got to be an element of debauchery, but also I think what you've said in that kind of, past, present and future is that you're kind of wanting everybody to feel comfortable or have some interest in walking into a venue that way. And I think that that's so important that, anyone that finds themselves, whether it be 3 a.m. or, that 4 p.m. kind of hour, if they wander on in, there's something there for them. There's something that piques their interest and that they feel comfortable. Because like you said, there's a lot of cocktail bars out there that, like you said, are pretty pretentious. You're paying $28-$30 for a cocktail. You can only really afford to stay for one drink and you feel uncomfortable. And it really takes the element of the whole hospitality thing kind of out of whack. So I think that you've nailed down exactly what a good venue should be. And it sounds like Wollongong's pretty lucky to have you. Tell me about lockdowns in the pandemic, obviously detrimental not only to hospo but live music in particular. How did you survive during that time?
Wow, yeah, so we opened in November 2019, so then we were, I think, 3.5 months before we were closed due to lockdown. It was really difficult. We had the strange thing about lockdown is that it was the sort of the pause button I feel like a lot of people have been waiting for, but then it came and then it was totally. So we had a really interesting start. So we had some licensing DA issues for the few months that we were open before we were closed down. That was all rectified sort of mid lockdown. So. So we had a lot of restrictions on our license to start, and then we had it all lifted, and we had our extended of trade and whatever which we got that certificate from Liquor and Gaming. I think it might have been June of 2020. So that was a sort of a bittersweet day. But that we spent most of the time just writing grants. Trying to get rid of all these little hidden overheads to try and to just sort of stop hemorrhaging the money that we're losing while we weren't open. And then we had a bit of fun of just trying to, as restrictions eased from time to time, that where we did a little bit of a delivery bowl shop type thing when we were allowed to do takeaways for that hot minute. And we pivoted and did all sorts of strange little things. Like we ended up doing a lot of shows when we could reopen at a restricted capacity, which we're normally at a capacity of 196. We were reduced to, I think it was like 45 and we had to be seated, and one of the bars was stripped out, and we put stools so you could sit down and watch a show. And we had all sorts of funny experiences with those, as a lot of hospitality venues would have had, of when you could stand but you couldn't dance, and trying to understand the definition of dance and the definition of a dance floor, when you need to wear a mask, and when you don't, and when you should, and the vaccination stuff. It was quite a time, and yeah, like we only managed to, thankfully, with, as I said, we had some support from the government, and a very understanding staff base. We managed to limp through. We're still sort of digging ourselves out of the hole, but hey, it's nice to be having some regular trade, and now we just would like maybe the sun to stay out for a bit longer.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think that time's really taught us how resilient and flexible maybe we can be, but also I certainly saw the support of, really good people of like you said, when a bar decided to do takeaway or a little pop-up bottle shop, it's really, you see the best of the people that support you and the locals that get behind it, which is really nice. So hopefully that's all behind you, and like you said, you can move on to just maybe that little bit of pre-planning like we used to do, like a good operation where you actually thought about what was happening in the next 3 to 6 months and could actually plan for a future.
Yeah, that would be lovely. Yeah, I'm just sort of the as we all found out, you just couldn't look much further beyond the day, for the last couple of years. So it'd be really nice to be 6 months ahead of the game and be just a little bit more organized, and hopefully, just keep doing some exciting stuff. Yeah,
fingers crossing everything for you. Tell me a little bit about what are people drinking these days? I mean, last time I went out in Wollongong, it was vodka Red Bull. I'm sorry to say,
blacks.
But yeah, probably double blacks. What's happening these days? I mean, what is the requests, and is it craft beers and espresso martinis, or what's happening down in the Gong? Beverage wise,
it's interesting. We have a pretty diverse sort of calendar. So obviously, we've got downstairs with our dive bar, and upstairs being a live music venue. With their live music stuff, it fluctuates quite with the genre. It's a bit fun actually to try and really see what people are going to drink, and I also like to throw in a few educational kind of things that just people might want to have something a little bit different. But I think, at the moment we're sort of going down, which I'm still learning too. So it's just like at the moment we're going through a bit of an Amaro phase, which has been a bit of fun. But yeah, so the Montenegro in particular, that seems to be a bit of a hit, and sort of the rum and Monty and mezcal and Monty and whatnot. But we're kind of we're typically, our lagers and pale ales are, I guess, probably the biggest selling beers. We've got a lot of nice crafty stuff, which will, it seems to be, maybe we're getting a little bit over the hill of it, but, over the last, little while, I think sours have become very popular. And I think that when we first opened, that was, probably nearly, selling 1 for 1 with some of the pale ales. So it's been kind of cool. We're kind of being a more sort of natural minimum intervention wine focused. And that seemed to be, I'm not sure about your experience in Sydney, but that seems to be sort of like a pretty strong kind of movement in Wollongong, in particular the northern suburbs of Wollongong. Seems to be the flavour of the month, or the last couple of years, I guess. So that's been kind of fun to try and I don't know, just sort of maybe get some cool wines that might be appealing to younger kind of muso kind of demographics, away from sort of maybe your typical vodka, lime, and soda kind of crowd. So that's been a fun kind of journey, and that's something that I'm still learning a lot about, and I really enjoy trying to. Because I guess there's some of these sort of winemakers that are maybe a little bit more rock and roll than maybe your traditional stuff that your parents or your uncles and aunties might be drinking, and it's like orange wines for us do really well, and some of the things that are a little bit more funky, it still can rattle some people where if they're just coming just for a straight up Marlborough Sauv Blanc, and if we don't have anything in the fridge, it seems to be, sometimes I think we still need to be able to work out how we can politely turn it into an education session. But that's totally sweet. But yeah, so I guess, I think you mentioned espresso martinis. I think that was espresso martinis and margaritas are our biggest selling cocktails, I think
I'm impressed that you do those, because I mean sometimes with staffing and live music and a lot happening, sometimes you've got to put limitations on what is actually happening behind that bar in terms of just churning out drinks. So I'm actually impressed that you even do an espresso martini, because I think sometimes it's more on pulling beers on tap and doing kind of those mixed drinks that's the benefit for us of having like our sort of like downstairs dive bar, that where we can put a little bit more focus in the cocktails and the sort of more labor invested sort of drinks. So and upstairs is we'll keep things a little bit more simple, focusing on just drinks that are built, not shaken, and just so we can keep a steady stream of service as well, because it can get busy upstairs for sure. Yeah, and the last thing you want to be doing is waiting in line when you're missing out on music. I hate that. Even festivals these days, you go to see something and you're back in like an hour, and you're like, man, what did I miss? That sucks. So tell me a little bit about what you love most about your job. If I was to say the last time that you kind of walked away after a day and you were just like super stoked about just how the day went, what do you love most?
Look, I to be honest, I think it all I ask myself that question a bit, and sometimes, most of the times, it's kind of making people happy in a strange way. Like I'd like to think about like it's money driven and whatnot, but especially one of the good things about if there's anything to come out of COVID is that you've got to focus your energy on other things other than just the bottom line, and in particular the live music stuff. When you see people like genuinely having a real good time and just facilitating an artist to be on stage and giving them the opportunity and giving that punch the opportunity to see their favorite act is that it really warms the cockles. That's a really good reminder of why you put in the hard yards, and so I think that's what gets me back every morning, I think. Yeah, for sure.
I love that. I think people seeing live music, often they can be counted as some of the best times of your life, and like you said, dancing and being a part of a community and feeling like, you're entrenched in a group of people enjoying something together. It's kind of, you don't really get that feeling many other places in the world. So I think that, now that we can dance or jump around or whatever it may be, and actually, listen to some great artists, it's truly something that's so special in life, and it's so great that we're able to have venues that facilitate it. So Nathan, I wanted to ask if we take the bar scene out and we take music out of your life, which we don't want to do, but what else can we find Nathan doing to entertain yourself?
I'm a really bad golfer, which is that's what I kind of do on a Monday. Oh, actually, no, actually, I did have a hole in one. So that's kind of one thing that, I'm bad, but that somehow I fluked that. So that's typically what I really like doing. Like I was a really keen cricketer when I was younger, and I still am, and I still play a little bit of cricket. But golf seems to be a nice. Maybe I'm sounding that I am getting older, aren't I? But that sort of seemed to be. I still have a little bit of competitive sporting itch, and that sort of that seems to be a good one, it's a good way to fill a day. It's a good walk, and I have a little bit of a rule playing golf is that's probably the only time that I can't have an alcoholic beverage. I try and keep that for a nice, 5 hours without a drink or whatever. I'm not saying that I'm drinking all the time, but you know what I mean? Like it's just, and then I think it's just that's my sort of good well-being kind of way where I can reset and clear my head. And then after a round, we'll have a beverage or whatnot. But I think that's one of the things that I enjoy doing outside of work. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that you feel like you've earned it when you've kind of, I have to say I have in my time been that Scotch girl that gives people Scotch on the ninth hole and poured drinks for people, which I can't say I really enjoyed. But I think that, I'm big into swimming, and I think, when you're at the beach, I don't want booze at the beach. And I get it. You're outdoors. You're just kind of in the moment and like you said, doing something good for yourself. And then when you sit down and you've, like you said, if you played 18 holes, that's a fair whack of time. So I bet that beer tastes a lot better at the end of the day.
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah.
So if you could only drink 3 beverages for the rest of your life, Nathan, what would they be and why?
Interesting. The first thing that comes to mind is I really like a light to medium body red, like something like a Pinot. And the reason for that is I just feel like the drink. It's just so beautifully drinkable. And I think with those lighter body reds, that if it's a bit hotter, I like to put it in the fridge and let it chill a little bit. And I think that's just a really good scoffable kind of red wine. That's I feel like just I like context is everything for me drinking. So if you said 3, I feel like that's going to be a little bit tricky because I like everything within context of whether it's the weather or what food you're eating or the company you're having. There's so much out there, but yeah, let's we'll just say Pinot Noir just to give you a definite answer on number 1. Secondly, I would probably Cooper's Pale Ale. I think, or any particular pale ale, but that seems to be the sessionable one for me. That where there's enough flavour in there to keep you interested, but you also, it can be a lawnmower beer as well. Like it's something that you can chug and enjoy. And thirdly, I would say just like a good nitro stout, like a Guinness or whatever. I think that I think how like a lot of people say that summer is good for drinking. I feel like colder climate is far better. I think, and there's like lots of other. It's a bit more conducive to whiskies and ports and fires and conversations. So at a nice cozy pub with a really nice cold Guinness in front of a roaring fireplace would be, I could quite easily do that. For the rest of my life, for sure.
Yeah, Guinness is a good drink. I think you've always been a Guinness drinker, haven't you?
I remember one of our close friends, old school friends from the Aussie days, Dan Galloway. I remember his dad, who's sadly no longer with us. But I remember when we were kids, we just turned 18. I remember Ken bought us a 4-pack of Guinness, and he had no longer been on the drink, but he bought it just so he could watch us enjoy it. And I think of Ken each time I have a Guinness. So I think that's where the love of Guinness started, and now you can insert the fireplace and the rest of it, and you've got yourself a real good time.
I totally agree with you. It's such a good drink. And Cooper's Green, I would never say no to a Cooper's Green. And I'm a big Pinot fan. So, we've got plenty in common, as we always have. Nathan, it's been such a pleasure catching up. It's really great to hear about how well you're doing. I haven't got to Lalalas yet, but I will, I promise you. And thank you so much for joining me and taking some time out of your day.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale. Stay tuned for more stories from the world of wine and drinks. Listen in every Thursday on your podcast app. Follow us on Instagram @overaglasspod and contact us at overaglass@deepintheweeds.com.au.